You know that I begin each of our weekly study sessions with a personal and heartfelt wish of Shabbat shalom. The words come easily as we regularly connect the seventh day of the week with dreams as to how the world is meant to be, and maybe someday will be. Shabbat shalom, Shabbat shalom. That's good, right? But those words ring hollow to me today as I'm preparing for our study together. Sometimes the simple wish of shalom is just too hard to treat seriously. The prophet Jeremiah saw that his world was teetering on the brink of destruction and bloodshed and divine judgment, but the people weren't listening to him. And this stiff-necked behavior was supported by many of the kingdom's outstanding leaders. Those leaders did not see a nexus between sinful behavior and the collapse of Judah. Priests and prophets alike spoke words of healing to the people, even though Jeremiah knew that healing was no longer possible. And so this is how Jeremiah responded. They dress the wound of my people as though it were not serious. Peace, peace, they say, when there is no peace. Shalom, shalom, ve'en shalom. Sometimes the word shalom rings hollow. April 28th was Yomashowa, Holocaust Remembrance Day. The date selected for Yomashowa by the Knesset in 1959 was connected, as you know, with the beginning of the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising in 1943. At 10 a.m. on Thursday, all of Israel came to a standstill as sirens sounded throughout the country. Traffic stopped, business stopped, people stopped eating and drinking their coffee in their local cafes. Jeremiah's words echoed soundlessly, Shalom, Shalom, ve'en Shalom. The annual March of the Living reached its painful climax on Thursday as 3,000 mostly young Jews, mostly young, mostly Jews, from around the world walked the 3 kilometers from Auschwitz to Birkenau. Leading the march were 8 Holocaust survivors. The president of Poland participated. It was a cloudy day. Cloudy in a meteorological sense, cloudy, grim, but it did not rain. It was a cloudy day, cloudy in the sense that there now is a strong likelihood that this might have been the last time that survivors could actually join the march. It was a cloudy day. Cloudy in the sense that there were Ukrainians present who wanted to be there, who wanted their message of pain and of suffering to be heard. The world must not be indifferent again to the acts of a brutal dictator. Shalom, shalom, ve'en shalom. But it wasn't raining. For the first time during the March of the Living, the third generation was actively present, picking up the burdens of memory, pledging to keep the memory alive. But it wasn't raining. The marchers were from 25 different countries, yet they all spoke the same language, the language of memory. Never again, they said. Never again. But it wasn't raining, because our study of Torah will never end, including during this weekend of remembrance and determination. So let's get started. Our Sedra is AHARE MOT, Leviticus 16:1 and following. The text, not lighthearted. The first focus is on setting the stage for priestly activity during Yom Kippur. You know it. The Kohen Gadol is dressed in a linen tunic, simple garb when contrasted with his usual rather splendid vestments. The high priest is described as making atonement for himself and then for the people. And then the Sedra ends with painfully detailed and harshly expressed laws dealing with sexual offenses. Read quickly, and I would never criticize anyone for wanting to get through those final 30 verses quickly. Our text could be understood as prohibiting things that remain socially prohibited to this day. Incest is prohibited. Stay away from your mother, your father, your brothers, and your sisters. Okay. Don't use marriage as a political tool. Fine. Don't have intercourse with a menstruant woman. All right. Don't have sexual relations with another male. Now wait, wait. This requires conversation. We'll get back to it. The text concludes, don't have sex with animals. All right. That's certainly abhorrent. And that's all that a cursory reading of the text can yield to us. But following the insights of the women of Reformed Judaism's Women's Torah commentary, let's go back and just notice a few things. First, these laws are addressed only to males. Women have no agency here. Rather, women are viewed as potentially dangerous, capable of contaminating men. Women are objects that need protection. Women live in the domestic realm, and that realm is being protected detail after detail, even as women are seen as extensions of the males in that domain. Secondly, these laws reflect a standard Torah insistence upon separations. I talk about this a lot. In this case, the separation of bodily fluids. Just as in the public sphere, the holy and the profane are rigorously divided, so too in the most intimate aspects of human behavior. As holy places have limits, so too does the human body. The women's commentary states the following about the verse condemning homosexual relations. Quote, "This is one of the most misinterpreted, abused, and decontextualized verses in the Torah, used to justify discriminatory legislation and behavior." Close quote. By treating a male body like a female body, boundaries are confused. And my friends, Torah does not like boundaries being confused. There is so much within this Sedra with which I vigorously, passionately disagree, and that's exactly why it's worth studying. Because the text can become a doorway to our freedom, a doorway to the freedom to study Torah with our personal values and ethical standards firmly intact. The freedom to challenge, the freedom to disagree. We see these verses reflecting an ancient world, a world struggling to clarify values worthy of being called sacred, a world within which the evolving Jewish people needed to separate themselves from the practices of their neighbors. Our passage ends with this, quote, "You shall keep God's charge not to engage in any of the abhorrent practices that were carried on before you." Judaism emerges here as a challenge to what was normative in order to reach toward the sacred. We should have no trouble in pointing out where Torah goes astray, where it fails to be what we need it to be. But in that process, we take on the task of moving Torah closer to its goal of holiness. So we conclude today's study with Shabbat Shalom, and we pray that one day we can utter the word shalom without a sense that we are yet far, far distant from being able to possess it. Shabbat Shalom.